Hello everyone, how's things? Okay, so I've got something a little bit different tonight. It's more of a response than a reaction. Um, I saw this video by Sarah Dawn Moore. It's called How Men Ruin Their Lives in their early 20s, or something along those lines. I don't think that's true. Wherever you are in life, whatever's happened to you, you have not ruined your life. There's a question of the consequences. Like learning the consequences of your actions. If I do this, this will happen. If I do this, this will happen. If I don't do this, this will happen. You know, and so on. Every day we are faced with a myriad of choices, and understanding the consequences of those will have some bearing on where we are in life. Okay, so but she's got that. She makes these 5 points. Now, I'm not sure I completely agree with. I'm not sure I completely agree with them. The first couple are to do with like relationships, and so not necessarily to do with interest, not necessarily to do with music per se. But if you are out performing as a musician, then you are going to encounter, girls being attracted to you, and you're going to see you're going to meet a lot of people. Let's put it that way. So the first point she's talking about is this thing about confusing chemical attraction with compatibility. Now, going back to when I was in my early 20s, away at university, quite into rock music. So I used to dress a certain way. I had this sort of this blue denim Wrangler jacket, which I used to like. I used to have my hair done in a certain style. And I just remember, that there was this one girl, and she sort of looked a bit like Deanna Troi of Star Trek, and she had like the long curly hair. She had like the stonewashed denim jeans on as well. And I just remember, as after some class I'd been to, and she stood at one end of the corridor, and she's holding the door open for me. Now, are you telling me you're not going to pursue that? You're not going to follow that one up? So that's part of it. But then the other side of it as well is that if you try and make this tick list of, right, well, I need somebody to like, so they have to be they have to have this opinion on politics. They have to be of this religious persuasion. They have to be sort of a certain height, eye colour, hair colour. How do they feel about money? And before you know it, you've got this big long list. And if you show up at a date or anywhere like that with this big long list, I'm starting to think of that film. Have you ever seen The Ugly Truth? Got Katie Heigl and thingy, the Sparta. What's he called? I've forgotten his name. Gerard Butler. Yeah. And it's sort of that she's of the persuasion that that like in order to get somewhere you need this big long tick list of things which they've got to satisfy, and he is sort of more of the about the sort of the chemistry, shall we say. Perhaps somewhere between the two you'll find it, but generally speaking, I would say if you're trying to form this big long tick list, it's not gonna go very far, and it's going to be very superficial as well, because with any list, there's always more stuff that you can add there. A person is much more than a tick list. Let's put it that way. And the next point she's talking about is this thing about sort of how you're spending your money. She mentions guitars, but then again, well, all right, I'm a musician. I don't mind that. But for example, I picked this up quite cheaply. It's a Paul Reed Smith. It's an SE, so it's made in Indonesia, I think. Yeah. Now, I could have gone out and I could have bought like a private stock or a core line, something like that. Just for the sake of having a PRS. But I actually like this one. I don't need to tell you it was quite cheap. I don't really need to tell you that it didn't cost that much. But I like this one. It plays nicely. I'm quite happy with it. But then of course like this whole thing on like superficiality, isn't there? And I mean, have you seen that film? It was Decline of Western Civilization Part 2. There's that scene with Chris Holmes. That thing which famously ended the hair metal movement. Where he's in the swimming pool. The journalist's interviewing him. He's not really giving straight answers, but he's saying, "Hey, look, that big house, I own that, and this swimming pool, I own this as well, and I can drink a whole bottle of vodka. Look," and he just comes across as being like, not a person of substance, shall we say. So I would say, so if I mean, rather than like alright, investing in stocks and shares, that's one thing, but it's more about investing in yourself, investing in your education. Where you want to be in life. What sort of stuff you're reading. Are you reading indeed? If you're looking on YouTube, what sort of videos do you tend to watch? Is it superficial stuff, or is it more sort of heady, worthy stuff, and so on. And then of course he's talking about this thing about like to do with like childhood trauma. Now, in some ways I do actually agree. They're like that we are shaped by our childhood experiences. We can't always help that. But then again, like this is a whole thing about the difference between like psychology and psychiatry, or that type of medicine. How we are physically impacts on how our sort of how our mental makeup works. Sort of any hereditary sort of health conditions that you've got. How are they going to affect you mentally? Things like that. And then the childhood experiences, yes. But a lot of that as well is down to being in like almost being in like a permanent prelingual state. Now, without getting too deep here, the prelingual stage, is this kind of going back to when you're a baby, and you don't know the difference between like the self and other, and then the idea is that if you're a well-adjusted person, then you gradually separate and you realise that you're an individual alongside other individuals, and that you're not necessarily the centre of the world anymore, and you learn to do things for yourself. But having said that every day life will throw challenges up at us, and it's how we respond to those challenges that makes us who we are, defines who we are, and it's how you choose to improve yourself as these things happen. Now, I mean, the type of man that she was describing in in that video just seems to be somebody who has had a fairly sheltered life, always had money, been in fairly stable relationships, and then suddenly, bang, something happens. Oh dear, what went wrong? Without doesn't seem to have faced these things, throughout life. I mean, and yet, if you'd actually spent a bit of time educating yourself, earlier on, I remember, in my 20s, I was also really getting into literature, reading, things like the Odyssey and the Iliad, especially the Odyssey though, where suddenly, Odysseus is, he's lost, after killing no, he didn't actually kill the Cyclops. He blinded the Cyclops, and as a punishment for that, he was sent into exile and tried to get home. And there was all these different trials which he had to face, and going through each of those trials, there's some sort of psychological challenge which he has to overcome, and then eventually he gets back, and then all those trials, they then prepare him for this showdown with these suitors, these idiots who've been wrecking the palace. When he gets back home, so he's he's coming back, and he knows how to deal with that lot. So it's all about so you can read that sort of psychologically about that like the truth self sort of challenging like the false self, but that's wandering off topic slightly, but I just want to get across that point that it's not just like sort of things which happen when you're a baby. It's stuff which is like all the way throughout life. Life will throw stuff at you, and you're not necessarily, if you're not anticipating each of those challenges, then you're not developing the language in order to resolve those challenges. You see what I mean? So I know this is slightly different, but I just wanted to make that point, because it's not about living this sort of naive, sheltered life and expecting there to be no problems, and the sun's always shining, and you've got you've got like the big dream house and the lovely wife and the lovely children who are well behaved, and then they are doing well at school, and and the dog and the cat, and whatever, and the field somewhere off in the field, there's a few horses maybe, and it don't work like that. I mean, maybe it does. Maybe it does where you are, but the rest of us, in the real world, and it is a case of just stepping back into the real world and accepting this, and rejecting the falsity, and not just like this thing that like a lot of these YouTube life coaches will say about having healthy boundaries, but it's things like it's fundamentals about recognizing the difference between good and bad, the difference between what used to be called sin, living a sinful life, and recognizing what that means, yeah. So anyway, I mean, I there's so much I could